Yeah, so for years I had the most difficulty sharpening a chain. In fact, I lived in Alaska and I cut mainly, well, it was all softwood there, fir and western red cedar and yellow cedar, stuff that cut pretty easy. And I didn't do a lot of cutting, just around my house. And so I pretty much, after failing at sharpening a chain forever and ever, um, I'd just buy a new chain every time I needed one. Which now that I cut wood all the time, that's too expensive, and I don't have a high-paying job to afford that sort of thing anymore. So I had to learn to sharpen my chain effectively, and that's where this comes into play. I found out about this. It's a Stihl chainsaw sharpener. It's pretty interesting. First, you got to really kind of understand what's going on with the chain. You know, normally you have the round file, which you use to file through the tooth. Now, the other thing that most people don't realize, and I didn't realize before, is that this other side is your depth gauge. It's called a raker or a depth gauge. And that takes a flat file, so you have to file that down. And the idea is every time you file the tooth gets lower, but the depth gauge doesn't. So at some point, your depth gauge is running over the wood, so your tooth isn't even cutting. So that's where the difficulty comes in. Professionals, they know how to set that depth gauge with the flat file after they use the round file. Well, Stihl came up with this device, and it accomplishes both tasks at the same time. It has a round file, as you can see here, and then it has a flat file that files the raker. It has an arrow that indicates the direction you're going to be filing. So, and these are specific to the size of chain, the pitch of chain that you have. So you have to buy the appropriate one, and that's listed down here. This one's a 3/8 pitch, so you do have to have that. But I've been using this for 2 years now, and man, I can just get my saw where it cuts so good, throws big chips. And if you're just starting out with a chainsaw, you'll find that when the saw quits cutting good, you'll notice your chips are getting smaller. When your saw is sharp, you'll be throwing big chips out, and it'll cut through the wood like butter. So, yeah, but the other issue that kind of tough is knowing where you start. I just kind of mark the first tooth up. So I'll skip that one and going this way. Here's your tooth, and then the raker's on the right. So looking at this, here's your round file for the tooth, and then the raker will be on the right. So you'll go along here. And the idea is there are marks to keep it perpendicular with the saw. These marks right here. So you'll lay it in here, like so, and then keep your marks perpendicular. And then I give it a couple. Better off sharpening often. I'll give her 2, and then here's another one going that direction. 2. 2. 2. I've had this Poolin, it's called a Wild Thing chainsaw. It's an 18-inch bar. Bought it in about 2000. Kept it in my boat in Alaska. Used it cutting firewood on the beach or whatever I needed to cut. And then I used it around the house when trees would blow down or whatever. Okay, so we're back to the original here, the marked one. And it's been a incredible saw. It's had a lot of use. This is the third bar, but it's been a really good saw. Thought about when this one finally conks out, I'm sure it will at some point, see if I can find another one on eBay, because it's really just been a perfect saw. It's so light. I have a nice Echo Timberwolf. It's a 60cc saw, extremely powerful, and I use this one almost exclusively just because it's lightweight and it will handle anything that I cut around here. The Timberwolf, I actually use that with an Alaskan sawmill, so I'll probably show you that this winter sometime. And then since we're going the other way, I'll mark this one. Okay, so 1, 2, perpendicular. And that was it. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Only other thing is when you first start out with a chainsaw, it takes you a while to figure out that if you cut way low on a stump, that it dulls your chain because there's usually a bunch of dirt and stuff down low. So I'll usually, if I'm cutting a bunch of trees, I'll cut them up, you know, at a comfortable working height, and then come back later and deal with the stump. Because when you're going along, limbing the tree and falling the tree, you don't want to have to mess around sharpening your chain. It's nice just to be able to have a sharp chain and keep going with it. Another thing people wonder about is you always see guys will have their bar upside down, and the idea is that you flip your bar. um, every time that I generally sharpen the chain, I'll flip the bar, and that keeps it wearing evenly. The way the chain goes around the tip, there's more pressure on one side than the other. So if you flip it every time, then it'll wear evenly. So I do that, and yeah, we'll give her a try tomorrow and see how she cuts.